you are just so right on point. It's just like this. Okay, blacks eat a lot of unhealthy foods, like a lot of pork chops, pork rinds. They eat like foods that like bottom of the barrel cheap foods, and they do that. And I know some whites are probably sitting back saying, well, why do they eat that junk? They ain't got no sense at all. Why do they eat that crap? Well, they're used to eating it. They're accustomed to it. So they keep eating it because it tastes good to them. While it would probably taste nasty to a lot of white folks. But it tastes good to them. They think this is good stuff because that's all they ever known. They don't know filet mignon and all the fancy dishes like lamb and veal and all of that stuff. They don't know all that, so they don't go for it. They go for what they're familiar with. They go for what they were given during the days of slavery. Basically their masters give them the food that nobody else has wanted, and so they have developed a love affair with bad food that nobody should have. And it's just a shame when whites look at blacks eating all this junk and don't even realize the history of why they're eating it, and don't even realize that they're not totally responsible for being locked into eating bad food, for eating food that they shouldn't have. And so that's how it is, like with educational system. That's how it is with the writing and blacks. A lot of blacks not talking proper English and a lot of things. They have been handicapped by their past, by what went on before, by being behind the eight ball, by being not being allowed to get an education during the days of slavery, being punished if they did read a book or whatever, or learn to read and write or whatever. And although that's no excuse for the attitude that many blacks today have of not really valuing education or are not really striving to excel, the past does indeed explain somewhat the present. It does indeed explain why blacks eat like they do, talk like they do, write like they do, or whatever. It does to a certain extent explain it, but to a certain extent it doesn't excuse it either, because there are now more opportunities than ever for blacks to advance. There's opportunities to eat different foods. There's opportunities to work different type of jobs than the ones you were talking about they traditionally got stuck with. They didn't exactly choose it. They got stuck with the crap jobs. They have opportunities to go to college, and they're not punished if they try to learn or whatever. They they can pretty much do a lot of things or do anything that they put their minds and their hearts and their wills to doing. But it's still kind of hard for them to overcome, because even in the recent past, mediocrity has been embraced, laziness has embraced. The welfare system crippled blacks a lot because it taught them to depend on somebody for their life, for their food, to get things. In other words, it taught them to if we don't have a man in the house, then I can get this money and I don't have to deal with a guy, and I can just fool around and not be married and get all this money and have kids and get money, and and they were being just groomed to be lazy and not advance, and that was on top of all the crap that it went on during slavery. So it was like the welfare system was reinforcing every bad thing that blacks had been ingrained in them since the days of slavery. And we only recently really reformed the welfare system. So how any whites could really expect blacks to be a lot further along than they are is beyond me. I mean, hey, have you been studying history at all? So it's not understandable. It's not totally understandable that any white person wouldn't understand why blacks are so many are criminals, why blacks eat bad foods, why they don't value education like they should, why they don't do this, why they don't do that. It shouldn't be a mystery if you know history and if you know what went on. But still, that is no excuse for my black brothers and sisters in a day and age when there are opportunities to not take advantage of them. You know, there's just no excuse. So I want black folks to listen more like to somebody like Bill Cosby than Jesse Jackson or whatever. Not that Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton and them don't have legitimate grievances, and they don't point out legitimate cases of racial profiling and racial discrimination and prejudice and stuff like that. But to a certain extent, they do reinforce the idea that we are victims. That we are victims. While somebody like Bill Cosby reinforces the idea that yes, you're facing persecution, you're facing problems, but you got more opportunities now than ever. So grab onto those opportunities and don't let those opportunities slip from your fingers by doing things like deciding to commit crimes and deciding to have babies out of wedlock and deciding to not take care of children that you have fathered. Don't let all the opportunities slip away by making bad choices. And that's what Bill Cosby is saying. He is saying, I realize that you got a bad history and that you're handicapped, but at the same time, take responsibility and take advantage of the opportunities that do exist, that never existed before for black America and other minorities. So I totally feel you on what you're saying. You know, whites should try to understand, but at the same time, they should be looking back and saying, come on up, and not necessarily trying to dumb everything down and lower all the standards just to compensate. You know, because how are people going to come up if you're lowering all the standards? You know, so if you're going to have affirmative action, just don't bring anybody into, you know, up on affirmative action, but make sure you're picking the best and the brightest, the most motivated of the blacks. Give them a break, but don't just say, oh my God, we got to get 10% black people in this workforce, so just hire anybody. Because that's not happening. What they found out is that affirmative action in some cases was bringing young people, young blacks into schools that they were not prepared to deal with, and then they would end up flunking out anyway, so what was the point? So affirmative action shouldn't be about bringing a certain percentage necessarily, but it should be about looking at the top level. You know, the blacks like me that graduated third in their class, people like that, and trying to maybe make some allowances for them, as opposed to taking somebody that was 100th in the class, throwing them into a school, you know, where all the whites and others have been much more better prepared. They're going to have a hard time and end up flunking out. That doesn't make any sense. So at the same time, I think white America should realize that blacks are starting behind the eight ball. They shouldn't do things like be too accommodating to the point where it doesn't encourage us to excel and reach for excellence. And while white America should try to give us breaks when it's warranted, breaks to those blacks that are really trying, you know, it shouldn't just give breaks to everybody, to any blacks, just willy-nilly just giving breaks because you're black. No, give them to them because they're trying hard, because they're at the top of their class and stuff like that. So I'm glad you said what you had to say. It sparked me to say a lot of things, and I hope I won't get any more House Negro and Uncle Tom comments like I've been getting, because I've been experiencing some of the same persecution you have just for not towing the line, just for not going along with a black militant or black victim type of mentality. So I've caught some hell too. I hope I don't end up being done the way you have been done. I'm not going to mention what has been done to you. I don't want to give anybody any ideas, but I totally feel you. I don't think you're prejudiced. I think that you're trying to help America, black Americans, white Americans. You're trying to help all Americans to realize and acknowledge the truth, you know, about the racial realities in this in this country's racial history, and trying to explain why things are the way they are, but at the same time saying, you know, things are different, they can be much better. So God bless you and keep you. Bye bye.